Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this short workshop for the Trinity Access Programme as part of their annual Teach Meet. My name is Lizzie Noon. I work for Worldwide's Global Schools, which is basically a programme and a one-stop shop for secondary schools to engage with global citizenship education. Today, I'm going to focus on something that's very dear to your heart as being part of Trinity Access Programme, and we're going to look at student capacity building, particularly looking at the alignment between both programmes as regards leadership in learning and pathways to college. So, I suppose just on my own reflection of speaking today, and I was thinking about student engagement. And previous to working for Worldwide's Global Schools, I worked for Concern for 15 years as part of their active citizenship unit. And one of the main activities that I was running was what was called the Concern Campaign Academy. Recently, when I was an anti-CETA meeting, I recognised three people who would have took part in the Campaign Academy at that time. Pictured here many moons ago, I think it must have been about 15 years ago, are myself and a bunch of students who travelled to Brussels to not only meet the development minister and the trade commissioner, to talk about what they could do about stopping child labour in the world and making it a fairer place for everybody to live. We're pictured there with MEP at the time, Liam Aylward. So just, I suppose, in reflection, I didn't have, I suppose, the supports in school as when we were growing up. As Jacinta said, it was Nábia Conch in my day. And so any cause like the HIV and AIDS pandemic, or I have there no death sentence, things that I was, I suppose, interested in combating when I was a teenager. It simply wasn't a thing that teachers would have been able to support us on. So I guess if we're thinking about what Worldwide do and what they do as regards student capacity building, is to give teachers the tools to be able to help their students out in taking meaningful action to have a positive change on the world. As a programme, we really encourage, obviously, critical thinking as a key skill that students use in order to figure out the world that we live in. We mainly work with teachers directly with the programme of teacher training, grant funding, resources, subject-specific resources, and also developing, like TAP does, a community of practice among the teachers that we work with. We do encourage a whole school approach, and we look at what we do as regards a head, heart and hands, developing that knowledge, but also developing the values and attitudes needed to change the world, but also hands in signifying taking action. We're fully funded by Irish Aid, which is great, and this allows us then to give small grant funding to schools who have great global citizenship education programs. So just first of all, I suppose this is a very big definition, but just to be clear on what we mean by global citizenship education, it is a process aimed at increasing awareness and understanding of our rapidly changing, independent and unequal world in which we live in, which is good. So we need obviously the knowledge and to be able to think about these issues, but we also need to challenge stereotypes. So we need to be very, very careful that we don't develop like an us and them, a global south, global north, too much thinking around that. And as a result, it is about getting students to critically explore the root causes of global justice issues, as opposed to just the effects that we might see on the news. And then linking them to their everyday lives, unless it's relevant to where they're at the moment. You kind of tend to lose them. But I don't know, it's I think students really grasp onto the idea of what's fair and what's unfair in the world. So anybody that has had the experience of global citizenship education in their school certainly does enjoy it. It is about inspiring solidarity by supporting people to realise their full rights and responsibilities and potential as global citizens to take meaningful action in a sustainable world. So therefore, we find that students, our schools that roll out maybe the knowledge part without kind of looking at the meaningful action part can be quite disempowering, and vice versa. It can be, if you're just going straight into the action component, without the knowledge, that can also be problematic. Anyway, so why are we here, and why is it important to instill the idea of global citizenship among the students that we're working with? This is just the most recent report from Oxfam, and every year they just actually before the World Economic Forum, they bring out an inequality report, and then this year, I suppose it's showing just stark differences and in as regards wealth inequality. So as you can see there, they're talking in the context of COVID-19, and the 10 richest billionaires have more than enough to prevent anyone on earth falling into poverty because of the virus and to pay for COVID-19. The virus came along, obviously, in a world that was profoundly unequal already. And the coronavirus has highlighted some of those inequalities, and some for the very first time. So in a way it's good because there's more awareness there. In another way, it's still something that was there and has got worse as a result of the coronavirus. We do need to put things into context of aid as well, whereas we see and we see much coverage of the aid that the West gives to the global South, but in putting it in context, 5 times the amount that we give in aid and invest in aid comes out of poorer countries. So where is that? What makes up that $5? So if we think about things like tax evasion, if we think about unfair trade, if we think about debt repayments, and if we think about illicit flows, if we think about extraction, that is taken or given at a very low price of minerals, natural resources, and particularly from poorer countries of the world. We also have to consider the fact that if everybody lived like we do in Ireland, so all 7.5 billion people lived like we do in Ireland, we would need 3.5 planets to sustain us. So we're completely overshooting as regards the amount of resources that we're using, and the planet is great at replenishing it, but no more. It has gone beyond the limits, and 4 of our planetary boundaries out of the 9 have been crossed. Okay, so today is about positivity, of course, and we were reminded by that by Jacinta Kitt earlier on. So where do we go from here with all of this? what's happening in the world. The good news is that students are grasping this. Schools around the country, we work with 250 schools directly, have the most amazing initiatives in reaction to all this information and I suppose the bigger picture that's out there. We also have a framework called the Global Goals or the Sustainable Development Goals, which has been really, really helpful, I think, to frame issues like poverty and injustice and inequality for schools and for students, certainly. There's something there that everybody can really kind of maybe latch onto, or something that they feel really, really passionate about. So this is heavily resourced from both ourselves and from the United Nations themselves. And them themselves have lots of very much kind of student-led and student-focused initiatives where young people around the world are sharing what they're doing vis-a-vis the global goals. Our own kind of framework within schools for the whole school approach is called the Global Passport, which schools can apply for and be awarded a global passport based on their kind of self-assessed view of the different areas: curricular, extracurricular, teacher capacity, student capacity, and school leadership and community engagement. But today I am just going to focus on student capacity. And I guess when we're looking at global citizenship education and student capacity, we are moving students from knowledge to skills, to values and attitudes, to meaningful action. But without really, really experiential or active learning methodologies, this can be quite challenging. So we are very, very strong. Our roots of global citizenship education come from the great educationalist Paulo Freire. So as a result, we would be strongly against, I guess, banking education as such, and like the use of methodologies that really develop skills like critical thinking and thinking independently are very, very close to our heart. So as you can see there, that's actually from one of the junior cycle curriculum, I think it's a science one, that we're moving students between kind of limited teacher guidance to more kind of open guidance. And Bridge 21, one of Trinity Access Programme's initiatives, is obviously very much aligned to this. I've put another bridge in there, and it's Bridge 47. Bridge 47 is an umbrella organisation that would look specifically at the target under the global goals of 4.7, which is for global citizenship education. And the target is that everybody in the world will have some form of global citizenship education by 2030. So if we look at kind of like, the categories that we have for student capacity, they come under 5 different areas. And today I'm just going to give you examples of what schools are doing, but how we're also helping build that capacity. The photos here all feature schools that are involved with the Trinity Access Programme and more. So up there we have Lakela Secondary School in Mulhuddard, so in the left-hand corner there, and they have a great initiative which we support called the Blue Sky Thinking. So it's kind of like the phenomenon-based learning, where the students choose the topic, and then every subject and every student, every teacher is involved in investigating that over a week. And so they've already got their global passport as well, I think, within the first year involved. The middle picture there is Art School La Salle in Raheny, and it was world's largest lesson, which I did with them a couple of years ago. So the world's largest lesson is learning about the global goals. So then the idea is the students go off then and pick a goal and take action on it. We have there, let me see. It's an Eco UNESCO club, and it's Tala Community School. So it's their Green Schools Committee. So just showing some of the activity that's taking place within schools. So we've loads of different forms, and they're all very, very unique. The student global citizenship committees we see there. It's the Culture Club in St. Louis, Dundalk, and there they are talking to the presenter of LMFM and being interviewed by them as regards their action on sustainable development. South Dublin Educate Together Secondary School have also a group who are responsible, say, for making sure there's a showcase project at the Educate Together annual event. Cashel Community School have an amnesty club. Kingswood Community School have a World Wise Club. We also have Student Climate Action Network, Tyndale College, Drimna Castle. In fact, Drimna Castle, the students are completely self-sufficient and even would apply for the funding themselves and apply for the Global Passport themselves without any teacher involvement. So that's really, really good to see. The other, I suppose, support that we put in place is really, really encouraging peer education and, like, you know, introducing the tools to teachers as regards how they can do peer education. So we have a few kind of examples there. We have the secondary school Step Aside, Educate Together, doing workshops with the Ballantyre Primary School Educate Together. We have TYs there from Loretto Navan, who are doing a whole fashion workshop with second years. And this was unbelievable. You can only see some of the students sitting on the floor there, but literally a whole hall full of students engaging with each other. No nonsense or nothing. All the second years, like, you know, the way we're fully engaged with the TYs on their workshops on fast fashion. We have students there. There's a great initiative from Maynooth College where they invite second level students into the college to teach them, say, about issues like climate change and gender equality and many of the global goals that I mentioned earlier on. Peer education for GCE learning. Again, I gave a specific example here of Blakestown Community School, who are here with us today as well. And it just gives you a couple of examples on how the students are have been influenced and can influence their fellow students or their primary school down the road, etc. by doing itself and by taking part in activities. It's a form of peer education itself. The skills development that happens as a result of engaging with global citizenship education can be many. Obviously, I mentioned the most important one, critical thinking and critical questioning. But what we found is that it can actually grow so many skills. So we have Sarah there in the corner. She's speaking to 450 students at our annual conference. We have Amir in the opposite corner, and he's actually reading a piece of his poetry. We have a big cake in the middle there, you can see. We have the girls again from St. Louis, Dundalk, speaking on the radio. We have students there from... so we have students there making objects that they can use in their global citizenship event. There's songwriting, and just down there in the corner there are Loretto Clonmel, who the students set up their very own swap shop, where to cut down on the waste from fast fashion. and encouraging students in their school to swap as opposed to buy something new. The big installation there in the middle was created by students in Limerick Educate Together Secondary School, who took their artistic skills in a way of like highlighting inequalities in the world as part of a bigger community project. So also, I suppose one thing, and which is really, really popular with schools, is we really encourage, like, awareness raising of issues. And this is done in a number of ways. You see there in Ashburn Community School, a few of the students decided themselves that that a way to raise awareness of the Sustainable Development Goals, but also to cover up an ugly wall outside, is that they paint a mural. So this was, again, like, completely led by the group of students who decided that was the action that they wanted to take. Students there from Presentation 2 made a video about gender equality. Students from St. Joseph's in Rush chose to raise awareness of fair trade, and the St. Joseph's there in Foxford, they set up their own shop, fair trade shop, as part of the actions that they were taking, but also to raise awareness of fair trade. But really, where is, I suppose, most evident and is the student-led action. So we see, obviously, last year, over the last couple of years, we've seen students really take to the streets and protest against how Ireland was tackling climate change and needing more action and calling for more action. And that's from, like, Meet being part of the committee. As you can see, the student from Cork Educate Together there. But it also happened within the school as well. So I suppose it's to say that it's not always about chaining yourself to the Dáil. It can be in a number of ways that you can take action. Like, for instance, we'd always encourage home ec teachers to engage their students in craftivism. So a way of taking action through craft, say, for instance. But there is St. Joseph's secondary school there in Rush, and second years actually took upon themselves to make their school a fair trade school. So it was their own initiative. After learning about fair trade, they were inspired to make their own school. Again, very much student-led and kind of contrary to what we think sometimes about that maybe, I know from the research that Trinity Access Programme conducted, that second to that kind of lull of, I suppose, leadership in second and third year with students. For Blakestown Community School, they actually had a whole school initiative that was started just by one girl who wanted to ban straws to be more sustainable. And as a result, everybody did one action. So every student in the school took an action, and it really grew legs. So it just shows you the impact that one student doing something can have such a domino effect on the school. Blakestown also would have engaged Create Schools to make their own video and their own song about climate change. One other thing that Blakestown did as well was, as part of their career speed dating, they included non-profit organisations to speak about the careers that they have. So there's alternative careers to what they had. You can see the students of Blakestown there. standing outside the Blanchardstown County Council buildings. You can also see them there with their wonderful miscellany of stories with the Assistant General Secretary of the United Nations and with Simon Coveney. So they used the publication, which was based on the Sustainable Development Goals, to really, really influence people in power and power, who had power to change. Just to let you know, there's Worldwide Global Schools, the whole community of people out there and organisations who are there to really, really build capacity. I was honoured to be part of the RTE Youth Assembly Steering Committee, and we brought 157 young people to the Dáil, and they came up with 10 recommendations for the Irish government on how they should tackle climate change. With the Rediscovery Centre, we have Eco UNESCO, there we have Our Lady's Drimna, and we have Self Help Africa speaking to them there. We have Game Changers from Trócaire, we have Amnesty. There's so many that are there just to really, really build the capacity of your students. How we work and how we support that is that we respond to the needs of teachers through guidance notes on their specific subject areas. So it means that in there, the subject guides are based on the strands that and the learning outcomes that need to be reached on the statements of learning. There's advice there for CBAs, for instance, as well. So because it's in the curriculum, that the students are obviously learning more, and then therefore they're more likely to do their student-led action on it. So we also have a series of webinars on different global justice themes as well. And I guess, like, the way, one thing we would say is that you don't have to be an expert. There's so many resources that give you tools, questions, methodologies, simulation games that can really, really help you to bring the knowledge to the students. So never feel like you have to know absolutely everything about the area. We have our own kind of school zone with lots of information. So the resource library there and the training and events. We also have resource sheets, just I suppose in particular for the global goals, that you keep global justice kind of close to your teaching on it. So we've lots of activities and resources there that we recommend. So if you in our website, if you just click on, and it will bring you to those. We're always updating Twitter and Facebook with new trainings or recommended trainings or articles and resources that are out there. So just a few upcoming dates for your diary. We do have the Global Passport Awards, and you can apply for that online by February 26th. Probably wouldn't recommend it if you're just new to us. We have our subject CPD. So we're we've finished home ec, science, and modern foreign languages, and all the other subject areas are coming up in the next couple of months. We have our annual student conference on the 22nd of April, but just, I suppose, to note as well, particularly if you're new, our funding applications for schools, that will be open on April 12th. It's very, very simple to apply, and closing date May 14th. So this is grant funding for any global citizenship education initiative that you have. So it's all there on Worldwide Schools. So thank you so much, and thank you for taking part today as part of the Trinity Access Programme. Thank you.